So, my name is Stanley Bresco with Kendrick's Realty,
And I'm Yulia Espinoza with Lieberman Law Office.
and today we want to talk about buyer due diligence. I know a lot of you who are in the market to purchase a home, you're seeing these searches come up and you see the little blurb that says buyer to do all due diligence. What does that actually mean? What are some topics to keep in mind when you are doing your due diligence before purchasing a home? And let me start off with just saying due diligence pretty much is gathering as much information as you possibly can before you make that move and purchase that huge investment. So you want to know as much information that is related to that property before you pull the trigger, realistically. So let's start off, right?
Yes.
Tax rates. So tax rates are important because if you are purchasing a home and you plan to live in that home, you're owner occupying that home, you may qualify for what's called a primary residential exemption for your tax rate, right? So when you're looking at these properties on the MLS, you'll see a tax amount listed there. You just want to verify if it's residentially exempt or if it's not, right? Because that can help you out with your finances on a month-to-month basis, with your taxes being either high or low with that exemption. Any additions to that one?
No, so we always get the tax information as the closing attorney from the town, but then that's kind of falls under the homework of the buyer.
Okay.
You can ask your attorney as well. We'll look into it, and then it is the buyer's responsibility for apply for the tax exemption after closing.
Okay. And that's major because if you could cut your tax bill, why not, right? So let's move on to the next topic. What would you say would be a good item for due diligence?
Probably the biggest one, home inspection.
Home inspections. Major.
Can go left or right.
Yes. I have some horror stories on that. We'll save that for a little bit. But I know a lot of individuals have waived their home inspections. And to those individuals, kudos to you. You have a lot of confidence. I personally would not waive a home inspection because that's my opportunity to figure out as much information about that home as I possibly can. And that's going to knock out a lot of your due diligence items because the inspector will walk you through everything in that home, top to bottom. And at the end of the inspection, will give you a report that outlines all the items that need to be addressed, all the items that have been deferred with in terms of maintenance, and things that you may need to work on down the line. And pretty much it's just more information for you. Right? Have you experienced any clients that have waived inspections and after the closing something has come up or like any issues?
Everybody wants something done after waiving an inspection. And I think the biggest item that also falls under the inspection or during the inspection period is checking building permits.
Yes.
So especially if it's a renovation of a home, that you know that it's a flip. If it's a multifamily home, just checking records from the building department to make sure that everything has been done by a licensed professional. Ask the sellers the question, has any work been done to the home? Because you can only know if there's an issue if you ask the seller. New kitchen.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
You can see it through the pictures, just making sure that plumbing, electrical, everything was full.
Everything looks good at face value, but you don't know if the actual work was completed correctly and signed off on properly. So horror stories on that. You don't want to close on a home that had work done that didn't have any permit signed off on because that becomes a headache for you down the line.
Correct.
So on top of that, we check for open permits from the old owner. If there were any work that was done that work signed off on, that's still an open permit that needs to be closed off realistically. So you don't want to take that on yourself. If that's the seller's responsibility, let that fall onto the seller so that when you purchase the home, when you close on a home, it's a fresh start for yourself. On the side of that, what about property lines, right? So when we look into a property, right, you want to see on the outside what is your land and what's not your land. What are some things that we can look at when it comes to that?
So if there's any structures on the property, such as sheds, fences, even driveways, sometimes can be tricky. So you got to see if there's a shared driveway,
Exactly.
if that's disclosed, or sometimes shared driveways are pretty evident when you take a look at the neighboring properties. But for property lines, we also do for single family, multifamily, as part of the purchase process, we order a plot plan.
Yes.
So it's not a survey. Survey is pretty much exactly what your property lines are. Plot plan is the estimated layout of your land based on the records from the registry of deeds.
Okay.
So here we can see if there's any encroachments, easements that are not recorded on the registry of deeds. If there's an encroachment, that gives us an opportunity to go back to the seller and see what they know, what they don't know, if they're able to move that shed that might be the neighboring shed that might be on their property, and so on.
Okay, cool. So another issue why that is important is because let's say that you purchase a property, huge land, huge acres, whatever the case is, and you want to put some fencing around your property, right? So calling a fence company, hey, just put it here, put it here, put it there. But realistically, if you spend thousands of dollars installing a fence and you only to realize that it ended up being on your neighbor's property, that's going to lead to a frustrating headache and an expensive repair, right? So take care of these items before you plan on doing a fence or an addition, and make sure that you're putting that into your own property lines realistically. Verifying square footage of the property. So have a quick horror story on this one, right? So a client of mine, we placed the offer on the property, got the offer accepted. The property was listed at 1,900 square feet. Okay, cool. During the inspection, and the father came to the inspection. Father's coming to your buyer's inspection. I'm for it. I love it. Come on by. The father was actually a contractor. So during our inspection, he took the opportunity to measure out each room, measure out the whole space, and come to find out after the math was done, it was not 1,900 square feet, right? So verifying with public records, they did have it as 1,900 square feet as well. But what we realized is this specific town, they were including an outdoor enclosed porch that was not livable space into the livable square footage of the home. So luckily enough, we found this out and we were able to back out of this deal and purchase a home that was actually 1,900 square foot, and my buyer is super excited about that. This is important because price per square foot matters, right? So if you're purchasing a property and you're under the assumption that it's 1,900 square feet, whatever the case is, you're paying for that 1,900 square feet. So you want to verify the square footage is accurate, and that's up to you as the buyer to verify that. Obviously, public records had the same number, but it wasn't the case, right? So that's another important item when it comes to doing your due diligence that you really want to keep mind of, because you don't want to close on that home and realize you're 200 square foot short than where you should be.
And I think square footage plays a huge role once you're buying new construction. Especially if it's a condominium unit that has been kind of converted and multifamily converted into condos. I think that definitely matters. So checking kind of the site plans, the floor plans, everything to make sure. Your attorney should be doing that as well, but as a buyer, you should keep that in mind because it's your money, not your attorney's.
Exactly. Buyer beware with everything that you want to buy, whether it's a car or a home, especially a home. This is expensive, so check everything you humanly possibly can. All right. Let's talk about title searches. I know that you do that a lot. Give us a little scope about that.
So a title search is done anytime a buyer's purchasing a home. So your attorney will pretty much pull a title report to the current property that you're purchasing, and the title report dates back 50 years from the current owner.
Okay.
So we check for any liens on the property, outstanding mortgages. We make sure that whoever's selling is the rightful owner, making sure that pretty much the chain of title is accurate and there's no loopholes or anything missing.
Okay.
Because then once you're the owner, kind of the onus falls on you. So if there's any issues with the title, then once you're the owner, kind of your responsibility. It's our job, our due diligence to check it to make sure all the issues are cleared by the seller prior to purchasing.
Are there any situations where you're checking for any liens, a lien comes up that even the seller didn't know about, and what happens in that situation?
So sometimes I think sellers just kind of like out of sight, out of mind. They could have pulled a home equity line that they completely forgot about, that was already paid off but was never discharged.
Okay.
So that is very common. Sometimes that bank gets either sold or bought out or shuts its door. So now you're kind of stuck looking for somebody to sign off on that discharge. So those situations do happen. Tax liens are also kind of something that sellers forget about. Taxes are a big thing in America. So pay your taxes, and sometimes sellers forget that they don't pay their taxes, and all of a sudden there's a big outstanding balance due. So we check that to make sure the buyer's not taking that on when they're buying the home.
Okay. Cool. I know we briefly discussed condos and such. What are some issues with the condo that we should be mindful of? So one thing that comes to mind are assessments that come up. Assessments are plans that they plan on. Let's say they want to work on fixing the roof down the line. That's going to come out of your condo fee. So that's a special assessment. And what are some other things that we can keep in mind if we're making a condo purchase?
So it is the seller's responsibility to kind of share the contact for the homeowners association, the condominium documents, the financials, the budget, everything that is relating to the condo. It's their responsibility because otherwise the buyer has no access to it.
Okay.
However, the buyer should be picking up the phone and calling that management company, asking the questions, asking, are the condo fees accurate? Are there any upcoming assessments. If there are any upcoming assessments, are they already included in the condo fees going forward, or is there a date that they're starting? Because then as your attorney, we try to put everything back on the seller. And we try to get the seller to pay off their share prior to closing. Sometimes it may not work out, but kind of negotiation that takes place. And also the biggest thing is exclusive areas. So if you're buying a unit with parking, storage, you should be checking for that. So don't just trust the seller to tell you that they have been using parking space number 3 and that's there. Correct.
Right.
So again, your attorney will be checking the condo docs to make sure that there are accurate parking spots, storage units that are exclusive to your unit. However, we also go back to the condo management to make sure that that is accurate.
Okay. Condo management. So I'm thinking condo fees right now. I know we've done a deal before where the condo fee listed actually isn't the condo fee that the buyer is expected to pay. So you want to definitely verify that as well before you close. I'm very big on no surprises. I love birthday surprises and all that. But when it comes to buying real estate, you do not want any surprises. It will send you for a loop, okay? I think that does it all with some of the topics that we have. If there's any other questions that you have regarding any due diligence items, definitely feel free to reach out to myself or Yulia. She's amazing. We're all definitely here to help you all with your purchase, with your sale, whatever the case is, because there's due diligence items on both the buyer side and the seller side, right?
Absolutely.
So once again, my name is Stanley Bress with Kendrick's Realty.
And I'm Yulia Espinoza with Lieberman Law Office.
Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Should we do a high five?
Woo!